here at the next live stream of the Foundation Max van der Stoel. Together here, I am with Aleksandra Iwanowska, the youth secretary from the Federacja Młodych Socjaldemokratów, if I pronounce correctly.
Great.
I try to practice it this day, but I think I managed like 50%. I have to practice a bit more. And you are the international secretary for the youth party, Nowa Lewica in Poland. And I'm really glad that you joined us here for a talk about the Polish elections, which are coming up this Sunday already, October 15. Very important, very interesting elections for Europe. And of course, also very important for Poland as well. Yeah, looking forward to talk with you about this. And a nice coincidence as well that you are also FMS, which is for us always nice, of course. So we were two FMS people here. Yeah, to start off, I think because if I look from the Netherlands, where we are based, there is not a lot of attention for the Polish elections. Of course, this is also regarding some other international issues that are really happening at the moment, but it's also in general, if there are German elections, French elections, especially US elections, there's a lot of attention. But why are Polish elections? Why are they also so important for Europe widely? What is your opinion on that?
Well, firstly, let me start off by thanking you so much for this cordial invitation for this talk and bringing attention to the Polish elections. And to answer your question, well, firstly, we're one of the member states of the European Union, so I consider all of the elections in member countries or countries aspiring to join the European Union to be important. However, in the Polish context, in our current national politics, these elections have been by many named to be one of the most important ones since the country was formed and since 1989. We're still very much have the possibility of another in third term of Law and Justice government approaching. However, we are not hoping for it, and many predictions are saying otherwise, that the opposition will win. It's also crucial in regards to the situation in Ukraine as well. Also, I would say not allowing right-wing and extremist populism to flourish in Europe.
Yeah, exactly. And we had a lot of attention here also to the elections in Slovakia, which were last weekend as well. It's also saw maybe some same sentiments you also see in the Polish elections. But we're very interested to talk about that a bit more in a minute, and also on the Ukraine involvement of the different Polish parties, and especially the Law and Justice Party, who had there was a lot of stir around things they said about Ukraine. But maybe first, to start things off, also for people that aren't really aware about the Polish politics and the different parties that are involved, can you maybe tell a bit more about the most important parties, and also especially about the Nowa Lewica party, where you are, of course, are involved in?
Yes, so let me start off by the current party that forms the government, which is one of the biggest ones, running as so-called, we call it election committee. These committees create the lists on which candidates are put for the parliament, the lower house Sejm and the upper house Senate. So the first one is obviously Law and Justice. That is currently in the government, and also on its list there are representatives of other parties currently in the government, for example. The second biggest party, the biggest opposition party, or the coalition, the civic coalition led by Donald Tusk, is one, and the third is the Third Way. It's a coalition of a newly formed political party after the presidential elections in 2020 of Szymon Hołownia, the so-called Poland 2050, and the Polish People's Party that has agrarian roots. So they're running as a coalition, and another committee running in the elections is the Left, which is an alliance formed between a few parties on the left, bigger or smaller, not to sort of break up the electorate and have the situation repeated of the elections in 2015, where we have not reached the threshold to get into the parliament. This has also been done in the previous elections in 2019. We also have the Confederation Party, which is a far-right fascisizing party, in my opinion, running. And we also have an alliance of independents, so people mostly from local politics, local governors or mayors, also running as non-party affiliates.
Yeah, so thank you. So quite a lot of parties. And you have also, the Law and Justice Party and the Donald Tusk Party, if I understand correctly, are the main forces of they are biggest in the polls.
Yes, Law and Justice, it's not just a committee, but also a party in itself, one of the biggest ones, obviously the biggest one in the current government, in the previous government. And the party of Donald Tusk, it's the Civic Platform, and the coalition in which it's standing for elections is called the Civic Coalition.
Exactly. And before I continue with another question, which is on the top of my head, I forgot to say that the audience can also ask questions, not only me. It will be a bit selfish. So if you have any questions for Aleksandra, please ask them in the Q&A and I will be sure to follow up on them. So to get back to the polls, so I also have here something in front of me, the polls, I think maybe from from today or maybe yesterday. And it really says the coalition of Donald Tusk, which is the Civic Coalition, and the Law and Justice Party. They're really neck and neck in the polls. How could this influence? What do you see happening maybe towards the elections? Are a lot of people expecting to change maybe their preferences because of they want to make maybe one of the two biggest? Or a lot of people really firm in their position inside the different parties? What do you think?
Yes, that's a great question. Actually, those committees being neck and neck in the polls is one thing. But let me start off by explaining how actually mandates are gathered or distributed in the Polish system. Because the polls mostly are showing popular support. So let's say we have 1,000 people interviewed and they state their preference. This does not directly translate onto the number of the mandates that a certain committee or party will gain. Because virtually in Poland, we have 41 semi-independent elections happening at the same time that come to form the national elections. 41 because we have 41 voting districts. The votes from abroad are counted to one of the districts in Warsaw. Thus, the real fight happens in the districts. And this can lead, and it's the DONT method that the mandates are distributed. And the fight on the level of the district can heavily influence the number of mandates that are taken up in the lower house, same, out of 460. Thus, for example, on a national level, a party can have 11% and get around 40 members of parliament, but then a jump to 12% can maybe lead to almost 60. So it's not directly proportionate. And to answer your question, actually, well, it's the answer is pretty simple. It's either the ruling party winning, or it's either the opposition winning, really. There are quite substantial evidence, if you're far enough in Polish politics or deep enough in Polish politics, that leads to the conclusion that if Law and Justice wins, it will form a coalition with the Confederation Party. This would put us in a far worse scenario than what was already and has been already happening in Poland, in my opinion. However, if the opposition wins, it's been stated many times already by various leaders, either the leaders of the left or by Donald Tusk himself and leaders of the Civic Coalition or the Civic Platform, that we will enter a coalition government formed by the representatives from the opposition. Another thing to mention would be that it's virtually impossible for a single party to form a government. There always needs to be a coalition formed with usually a smaller partner. And in those two scenarios that I presented, there is also with those two biggest parties or committees being neck and neck, we can also, in my opinion, experience after the elections, when we'll know how many mandates were given to a certain group, we can experience members of parliament joining and transferring in between parties. So there will be another fight will also start after the elections and after we have discourse.
Okay, so also a fight is maybe expected besides the public, between MPs sometimes switching sides between parties, and the parties try to find a majority in the parliament. Yeah. Oh, okay. And because if I understand correctly, it looks like you will have the two blocks. You will have probably the block on the one side, which is the extreme right bloc, which is the Law and Justice Party, very much right, and also the extreme right with Confederacja. And the opposition is the other bloc. Is that also something that is for the Lewica party because you're not, of course, in the coalition with the Tusk party, but would it be logical if to say so for you to work together probably with the Tusk party after elections?
Yes, the party Nowa Lewica and Lewica as a coalition has committed itself not to only work with the Civic Platform or the Civic Coalition, but also with other parties such as the Third Way, the other coalitions. Because otherwise also what I mentioned previously, that it's not virtually impossible for one bloc, one party to form a government. Also, if those parties do not get into the parliament, the smaller ones such as Third Way or Lewica, it will mean that more mandates will be distributed to the opposing side. So it's also for the big opposition parties or the big opposition coalition, it's also crucial that the smaller coalitions or parties get into the parliament.
Okay, so that creates quite an interesting dynamic, because maybe it's something, of course, for you it's clear, and for me, I have the polls in front of me, but maybe for the public that's watching as well, we are talking about 10%-ish where Lewica is and Confederacja is, and also the other party, the Third Way. I think, is that correct? Like 10% of the electorate?
Yes, these polls vary poll to poll, day to day, morning to evening, really. It seems, in my personal opinion, that to predict a more accurate actual score of the mandates is to look at the district to district.
Okay.
However, it's not so clear to determine before the elections what is going to happen. But that polling of around 10% is, I would say, rather the average polling and a very, very stable one. There is no expectation to fall for Lewica, at least, to fall below 10%.
And what is the threshold? Maybe that's...
The threshold differs. If there is a coalition of parties, that means that a coalition list, that means that the threshold is 8%.
Okay.
If there's a so-called single list of a single party or a coalition of parties, that is 5%.
Okay.
On a national level.
Interesting. Yeah. So it's good to know for someone who wants to follow the elections on Sunday that it's also more than only the percentages, but only the different ways in how it's counted between districts, between other other things. That's of course good to know that you have to look beyond the average polling. And interesting, yeah, for me as a political science person, it's always interesting to hear about the different systems. But maybe what's also important to discuss is also the main themes of the election, because of course we have the different parties. There are also on different sides of the political spectrum. But are there any topics, any main topics that are really for all the parties that are really seen as the most important topics in Poland for these elections?
To answer this question, I would say firstly that it seems to me that many of the main topics of the elections we as the left have been able to push. One such topic is housing. This is a crucial topic in the campaign. Virtually every political party that's running has picked it up and referred to it. Also, women's rights. It's also a very, very crucial topic, and a topic that certain parties perform differently at, but also regarding the housing too. There are very different approaches to solving the rising housing crisis, and climate, I would say as well. However, not picked up by all of the parties, just one or two, but that seems to be one of also the most important topics for younger voters.
Yeah, there's of course a difference also between older voters and younger voters.
Yes,
and maybe
also a crucial perspective or opinion when talking to the possible voter is having law and justice removed from power.
Okay, yeah.
But that seems that it's no longer the only possible answer that voters are looking for more.
Yeah, and voters are also, it's something maybe to discuss also more. Yeah, there are really a lot of people really are fed up with the democratic backsliding, and different things are happening maybe in Poland. Maybe that's interesting to follow up upon. Maybe one thing I would like to ask also is about the women's rights, which you mentioned, which is an important topic. Is that also very much related to the abortion rights issue that was also of course in Poland? If I remember well, a couple of years ago there were a lot of protests, and the Law and Justice Party really restricted a lot of abortion rights in Poland. Is it focused on these kind of issues?
Yeah, especially these issues, abortion rights. Yes.
Okay, so yeah, that's a very important topic, of course, and very important that these issues are high on the table for the elections, and also on housing and climate. It's very important topics also for the future. And are there also, as you say, there are a lot of differences, but maybe between young and old voters, especially on climate. Are there maybe also some specific issues that are in the older voter group that people are more concerned about, or is it quite similar?
It's really hard to generalize.
Of course, yeah.
But I think that there are certain things for certain groups of voters that are crucial and non-negotiable, and certain things that, especially through the internet, mostly younger voters have pushed forward. Also, there was also the mobilization of voters. That's a crucial thing that might tip the scales of the elections, in my opinion, because less than a month ago, there came out a statistic that around half of women aged 18 to 32 are not planning on voting. And I think that that's no longer the case.
Okay. Why do you think that is no longer the case? Why so?
Huge civic mobilization and many civic and mobilization campaigns that I think were quite successful.
Okay, and then also maybe you refer to the big protest, the big march that was in Warsaw, the March of a Million Hearts.
Yes, that has been an initiative started by Donald Tusk and the Civic Coalition. Many of the opposition leaders as well joined and were given speaking time and were treated as partners. So that could possibly be seen as a way to show before the elections to the electorate that the opposition is actually planning on cooperating after the elections. Yeah, and that's really it. There's a lot of views on that march, and especially on the left. However, it has been mostly supported.
Okay, yeah, that's these are important moments to mobilize people, of course, also for the elections, which maybe for some people they weren't really interested in, but if they see so many people going, also other initiatives maybe in the left that really helped. So that's good to hear. And maybe coming back to the issue of the democratic backsliding, as you also mentioned, a lot of people are fed up. They want Law and Justice Party removed. They want change after 2 cabinets of the Law and Justice Party. What are like the specific things that people are mostly concerned about regarding the democratic backsliding process?
I think that one of the crucial topics and also one of the biggest topics pushed for by the left really is the separation of the state and church. Renegotiation of the Concordat agreement, and if not possible, breaking it up, not having the state fund churches, having the church to pay taxes finally, and also removing religion as, mostly understood Catholic religion from schools, because not everyone in Poland is Catholic or religious. So that's one of the crucial things. Also the judiciary and the scale of corruption, really. Also, it seems that people are just generally tired, no matter how socially oriented law and justice can appear or try to appear. It seems that people are not up for everything and everything that it's pushing alongside social support, for example, and building a so-called an illusion of a welfare state. And also one other thing would be definitely what's happening in education. There's not enough teachers to teach kids at schools. Teachers are paid horrendously low wages, and everything how Law and Justice is making also Poland to be seen around the world. I think that people are not up for it.
Yeah. And before I turn to some questions from the Q&A, there are 2 questions. Maybe I wanted to also continue about what you said about corruption, and maybe also the illusion of the welfare state that maybe has been built under the Law and Justice cabinets, and how does this relate to this? Because there was a scandal regarding the migration identity cards of people that were bribed, the Schengen visas, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, if I'm correctly.
Yes.
Has this really influenced the popularity of the Law and Justice Party, and was it really a tool for the opposition to really use in the campaign? Has this been used in a good way, you think?
Sadly, at first, it has been used, in my opinion, disgracefully by Donald Tusk, and it has to be said. A video, for example, was made about illegal migrants being brought to Poland, really pushing the xenophobic rhetoric when it really wasn't needed, where the conversation should be about something else. But with all of the opposition talking, really, I think that ultimately what was achieved is showing the Polish people really that there is no illusionary, dangerous migrant really at any of our borders, and that we should not fear people wanting to find refuge in our country, as it has been because on one side, Law and Justice and the government has been, threatening Polish people about the erosion of our culture. What people coming to Poland, how it might unfold dangerously for us and for our values, and on the other hand, it has been literally selling visas, Schengen visas, to people around the world. And I think that ultimately this has had this effect, that by Law and Justice itself, the xenophobic and racist rhetoric has been broken, because the hypocrisy really of the government has been shown to the public quite bluntly.
Yeah, that's really a telltale of something, that happened in the lead up to the elections. Let me turn to one of the questions in the Q&A from Alex Antozek, who asks, curious, what are your thoughts about a possible post-opposition win situation? Some are worried the Law and Justice Party, PES, may try to engage in a Trump-esque attempt to hold on to power, considering their grip on the courts. What do you think about that?
I sincerely hope that it won't happen. And if they lose, and which I really sincerely hope and wish that they're going to lose, that they'll just remove themselves gracefully into the opposition benches.
Yeah, and are there any things said already about this? Maybe there are already statements made about the peaceful transfer of power, or is this an issue at all in Poland? Actually, maybe it isn't. Maybe people already expect.
I think people expect that,
okay.
and I think that people would take to the streets if Law and Justice
Yeah.
wouldn't be so willingly accepting its defeat. However, there has been some, for example, Instagram posts of legal analysis, how some loopholes in the Polish law could be used. However, for now at least, that seems like a bizarre scenario.
Yeah, and it also, it says something about the political culture. If it isn't an issue at the moment, it may be quite rare if we see it, but it's something to keep an eye upon. So I think it's a good question.
Just as everywhere.
Exactly. And I think let's move already to the other question, which was asked in the Q&A. It's from Sutera Carmelo. Thank you for the question as well. Good evening. Are political parties allowed to send witness to the polling stations? Is there a big risk of fraud in some electoral districts?
To put it like this, there are 41 electoral districts, and in every district there are multiple places where voting will take place. Same case in Belgium, for example, where I will be a member of the election committee by the branch of the left. I think that if all the regulations are actually followed and representation is diverse in all the voting stations, that should not happen. And I sincerely hope that that will not happen, because it's knowing the regulations now by heart, as I will be myself from the very early morning to the very late night participating in the voting procedure. That would be really hard to do.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And I think crucial for free and fair elections. And I think happy to hear that that's the case, and happy to hear that you're also helping out in a polling station, which is a very nice thing to do. I can also speak out of experience here in the Netherlands. I am always present at the polling station. Next month, also hopefully as well.
Also, if I may quickly add, with the presidential elections 3 years ago, we have had the situation where votes from abroad wouldn't be counted, for example, because people were voting by post, and the post would, with the ballot, would arrive 2 months after the elections to people. Also, this is now not possible to vote by post from abroad. And we have hit a historical number of people who registered to vote from abroad. over 600,000 people.
And that's a lot. That's a quite a big chunk of the electorate in Poland, which is how many people, if I
this is a high incredibly high number, considering that all those votes from abroad are only added to one list, which is the Warsaw list.
Okay, but that's quite a lot. But and the full electorate of the whole Polish population, it's maybe around 30 million people, or
yes.
That's so it's quite a big chunk.
People holding the right to vote, that might be higher. Yes.
Okay, so 600,000 is quite substantial. Yeah, definitely. That's good to hear that it's better arranged this time around in the presidential elections. Maybe another thing which is also very important for free and fair elections, to keep on that topic, is the media. What is the current situation in the Polish media? Is it very much on the hand of certain parties? And how do people look to the media? Are there a big force in these elections? What are your thoughts about that?
Sadly, yes, and I say sadly because I wouldn't consider media to be completely unbiased. If it was the other case, I would be up for it 100%. However, we have a situation of where the state media, the state television, also state newspapers, for example, which are controlled by the capital of the state, or where the state has a big share in certain companies. It's, to put it bluntly, just pushing out government propaganda at this point. And has been doing so for the past few years already. Thus, I wouldn't say that these elections are fair. Also, state media are free. This is where most people get their news from, to be honest. But also the so-called opposition media are strongly aligned, or very much, I would also say, without really hiding it, and not having been hiding it for the very few years now, is aligning itself with the main opposition party, and where that creates a sort of a vacuum where smaller, very still important for these elections, especially if we're talking only on the level of these elections, where their presence in the parliament is also extremely crucial.
So that's something that's quite worrying. It makes it sometimes blurs also the information. It blurs the information provision in the election, and especially in the lead up to elections, there might be a lot of disinformation.
Yes, but also one point to add to many of the media that are not state-owned, the access is paid.
Okay.
So someone has to take the initiative, not just to sign up, but to pay to access media. However, it seems that now also a lot of information is shared online on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook still, and that people are sincerely interested in reaching the true information. And obviously, yes, people are in certain informational bubbles. However, it seems that regarding, for example, the referendum, internet plays a crucial role. In spreading of the information.
Yeah, that's good to hear, and perhaps most likely, especially among youth, that will be very important.
Yes.
But as you say, for the more independent style media that you have to pay for them, it's a real barrier, possibly also for the older generation. So that also makes it more difficult for them to get factual news. So I think that's quite worrying. And a nice bridge from your side actually to the next question I would like to ask on the referendum. And afterwards I will go again to some questions from the Q&A. So I have seen them as well. The referendum, I think that's another interesting thing around these very interesting Polish elections. A lot of things are happening around these, and this is also one of the things that I'm really curious about. Also thinking about what is the idea behind this referendum, and has this been done earlier with an election? What is the whole process? Because we have and maybe that's good for the audience to also know, we have 4 questions which will be asked alongside with the general election, with the normal ballot. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Aleksandra, of course. And the 4 questions, I will also read them out because that gives a bit of context, are: number 1, do you support the selling of state assets to foreign entities, leading to the loss of Poles' control over strategic sectors of the economy? Number 2, do you support an increasement in the retirement age, including the restoration of the increased retirement age to 67 for men and women? And then number 3 and 4, which are especially, I think, interesting from international relations perspective, are: do you support the removal of the barrier on the border between Republic of Poland and the Republic of Belarus? And number 4, which is, I think, a rather biased question, if I'm honest, and it's maybe a bit underwhelming, I would say, but do you support the admission of thousands of illegal immigrants from the Middle East and Africa in accordance with the forced relocation mechanism imposed by the European bureaucracy? If I read this, I would, the first time I read this, actually, I was thinking, okay, this can be real, that you really ask a yes or no question in this way, especially the 4th one. What is the deal with this referendum? I'm already very critical.
The deal with this referendum is precisely what you've just said. And this referendum is not just, the questions are simply ridiculous. This is, you either push a propaganda by giving people the free ballots when they're going to vote, and demanding from them that they either refuse before they take those ballots, not to actually participate in the referendum, using the opportunity by the government to have the referendum on the same day as the elections, but also asking such ridiculous questions, to which yes or no answer is already so political, which is completely against about how you conduct an actual referendum. So my view is that this referendum is put on the same day as the elections, to have as many people participate in that referendum, and no matter their answers, to have this referendum pushed and then used against the European Union, for example, when it comes to relations with foreign capital entering Poland, so thus economic relations. Any sort of talk or negotiation on the possible migration mechanism of the European Union, or migration policies to put it more generally even, and then to just use it, as an ammunition towards the European Union, but also towards the opposition in the country after the elections. And thus, I'm happy to see so many people being furious about it, because I think everyone should be, and openly stating that they're not going to take part in the referendum. There's so many. Half of my internet currently is about how to properly refuse the referendum ballot. And not by bringing down the participation, which is in the Polish law is required 50% for the.
So for the people listening that are able to vote, how to do this?
I think that the Polish people who are voting already know.
Okay.
But to refresh your memory, before you sign anything stating that you're present, you clearly say that you refuse to take the card to the referendum, and duly observe the member of the committee noting that down, and only giving you 2 cards, to the Sejm and the Senate.
Okay, so a lot of people will be. They will be abstaining from voting in the referendum. They will be, they will be not be present. So that will mean that there is a very the presence of people will be very low. The turnout will be quite low, possibly. Yeah,
I sincerely hope so.
Yeah. Okay. So, and maybe another question on the referendum, and then I will turn to the Q&A. Is it also, besides of a message maybe to Brussels, to wider European capitals, maybe about the Polish sovereignty or whatever, is it also a tool for campaigning? Because to be clear, the referendum is pushed by the current governing party, right? The Law and Justice Party. Maybe that's something that we already presumed, but it's by the Law and Justice Party. They put the referendum inside the election, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And is it for them, so that's good to have clear maybe, but is it for them also a tool to push the campaign towards maybe some narratives and maybe some issues that they maybe feel comfortable with, or they want to push the issues of the campaign away from maybe corruption, away from housing issues, away from women's rights, away from education issues. They want to push it more towards sovereignty issues, foreign relations, migration. Are these kinds of things also playing a part here?
Absolutely. I mean, a very well-known already tactic used by the far right anywhere in the world is to, when you're, especially when you're in government and things aren't going so well, people are starting to get angry, your polls are dropping, is to go and find another victim that you can present as an enemy. So people have yet another person or state or institution to blame for what the government is really doing in the country.
Yeah, it's kind of scapegoat. Yeah, it's what you say. It's a far-right tactic we unfortunately see more wider in Europe and the world. And maybe that's also an important thing where, as international, as foundations and institutions such as ours, we can also come up to bring attention also to the Polish elections and wider to bring it to the real issues that are there, such as the housing crisis, education crisis, which you already mentioned. So I think there's also an interesting role to play for us, and I'm happy, of course, to be here with you talking about it. Let's go to the Q&A again. Maybe that's a good one. I have a question from Timon Driesen. I will go chronologically about the questions, which is, what implications will the results of the elections have on the relationship between Poland and Ukraine? So that's something that I haven't even asked and still wanted to. So I'm happy, Timon. Thank you for asking this question. Yeah,
I think that the implications will be grave, and not just for the Polish-Ukrainian relations, but also for the European Union in relation to Ukraine. The current opposition forces have been, since the very start, firmly standing in its support to Ukraine. And the Law and Justice has not so much. We have seen withdrawal of support. We have seen the affair with the grain happening. Thus, it seems also that when the opposition gets to the government, we will not just have one party dictating the foreign relations aspect. Thus, it opens up, in my opinion, a huge possibility for actually diplomacy to be done right, and diplomacy be done diplomatically. It's crucial also, I think, especially for us, that when talking about Ukraine joining the European Union, is not having to experience what really many of the countries from the Eastern Enlargement in the early 2000s have experienced, with foreign capital completely overflowing the country. Thus, and actually having people emigrate in the so-called, participate in the so-called brain drainage. Thus, strong relations between Poland and Ukraine, and Poland actively taking part in aiding Ukraine in the rebuilding process is crucial, and also possibly, and as we are neighboring countries in the end, also seems just logical for it to happen, really, and especially also with possible realignment of Poland and Polish relations inside of the EU and with the EU, thus aiding Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly. And it's good to hear that in opposition, that's a very important topic that is really shared among a lot of parties, including Lewica. But yeah, if I understand correctly, Law and Justice Party, it doesn't really. And maybe it's also some campaign rhetoric, but we also have the far-right Konfederacja, which is probably a potential partner after the elections. And they're really inclined on really stopping a lot of aid to Ukraine, if I'm correct.
not just stopping aid to Ukraine, because that's one thing. They have not even been trying to hide their pro-Russian stances.
Okay.
And very clear connections to money from the Kremlin, running through the foundations on which their movements are being built or have been built. And many of such foundations, for example, have been instrumental to the current government in tightening the abortion laws, pushing through various messages, or simply coming up with how to take away rights from half of the population of Poland.
Yeah, that's very worrying, and especially you again see what you also see in wider in the European Union, how the far right also has in some ways, in some parties, they have ties with Russia, and that these authoritarian anti-democratic forces, they are sometimes quite organized, and they are quite and that's something that is also very important for opposing forces, for us, for the social democratic force, to be organized as well on our issues, because you see in these far right parties, they have a lot of ties and they are very much organized. But that's good. That's interesting to hear some more information about that, but it is quite worrying indeed. So it's also one of the reasons that it's quite important for the opposition to get a good result. And let me turn to another question in the Q&A before I continue again. Is are you worried about access to EU funds if the trend regarding rule of law and democracy keeps going? So maybe to phrase the question in another way a little bit. So are you worried about how EU funds will be given to Poland if this trend will be continuing in democratic backsliding? If I'm correct, there are already 30 billion euros withheld because of the judges, the new way how judges are chosen, and there's from the COVID funds. I think there's already withheld from Poland, right?
Yes,
so,
from the EU. From the EU Recovery Fund, the funds that were or are to be given to Poland are being currently withheld due to backsliding and not respecting the rule of law, as rolling out these money is connected to standards of the rule of law in member states. This is also a grave issue in the campaign, sadly, that opposition parties have been switching their opinion on. Firstly, as how it suited them. It was only the left that has voted with Law and Justice at first to have those funds admitted. Then we were presented by all opposition media as people who are willingly aligning with the Law and Justice that is being oppressive to half of its population, stuff like these. However, I'm really happy to see all of the opposition forces, except of Confederacja, who is anti-European to the core, change their stances and now advocate for not just the money, but for upholding the rule of law in Poland, or actually bringing it back, to be more precise.
Yeah, exactly. Because it also shows that sometimes maybe there are very light thoughts about the power of Europe regarding some countries, but really there is some power here when you have these funds. And also regarding maybe Poland and Hungary, you can really influence, and you can influence democratic forces, and you can help democratic forces by really having a statement as Brussels. So I think that's good to hear that in this regard, it also works regarding a lot of parties. So that also has its effect. And we're already talking for 50 minutes. 50 minutes.
Are there more questions?
Yeah, so it goes very fastly in my mind. But there's one still from Kido before we will end the live stream. Unless there are some questions still from the audience, then we really quick into having them in the Q&A. But the question from Kido is, what role is there for sustainability /green in current Polish politics? So we really very shortly touched upon it in the beginning of our talk, but maybe it's interesting to say a little bit more about it, the role of climate change in the current as an issue in the current politics.
Yes, there's much room, and there's always room for improvement, I would say. There are a few forces in the current political landscape of Poland that are particularly strong on these issues. One of such is the left and also the Greens, with the Greens being a part of the Civic Coalition. We more often agree than disagree, I would say. However, the left having, pushing for sustainability, green energy, renewable energy is not enough. We also in Poland, I would say, are really much struggling with how coal mines are being used in a political play. With that part of state business being completely not bringing really any advantages even to the state budget, really. So there's a lot of talk, and also it seems that it's the youth and mostly the younger voters that are pushing for green politics, and I'm really happy to see it. But that also requires a complete realignment in Poland about how we are actually talking about the European Green Deal, for example, because there's a lot of skepticism for it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And it's interesting to hear more. And I would like to, talk about this maybe for 2 more hours, but I think it's good to round off our talk. It has been very interesting to hear more about the Polish elections and about all the different topics, all different parties, the system, everything coming up in the Sunday elections. And maybe to round off from your side, Aleksandra, what is the main thing we have to really look out for the Sunday elections, and what is the thing you really hope for on Sunday?
What I really hope for is that a new group of younger politicians will join the Polish parliament, many of whom are candidating are my friends and people with whom I have, for example, started with in the youth organization and also entered the party with, because I really think that a change of representation is needed. Young people are not represented by young people, so this is what I sincerely hope for and wish for our results, that more younger people and first-time MPs will appear.
Yeah, definitely, that's good to hear, and yeah, it's really likewise from here, and we really hope for a good result for the Nova Lewica party. It will be amazing, so we're really going to follow it. And I'm really curious to see what the election results will be. So thank you a lot, Aleksandra, for being here, for educating us on Polish politics. I'm really
I did
know
my best.
a lot more.
I hope you're taking something from it. And
yeah, I definitely
so much
will.
for having me.
Thank you so much, and also thank you very much to the listeners for this live stream event of the FMS, for being here, asking very insightful questions. For the Dutch listeners, I would also encourage you to sign up for the Green Left event, which they will be following the Polish elections on Sunday evening in Amsterdam. I have put the link to register yourself is here below here in YouTube, so you can register yourself and join from the Netherlands and watch the Polish elections. And for the rest, I'm looking forward to seeing you in our next live stream on maybe another election, maybe the Dutch elections in a month's time. It's a home ground for me. So thank you a lot, and we'll see each other.
We'll join as a listener then.
Yeah, that will be great. Thank you a lot, Aleksandra, and thank you to everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.